the two ilium, the sacrum, and the coccyx. If you were to take these two bones on an actual human body and pull them towards each other, so if you go like this, if you go like, so watch, so stand up for a second. I'm trying to get you guys to stand too, because when you sit for this duration of time, it's rough on your body. So if you do this, so like stand, grip your hips, and kind of press in. Do you feel that like here opening a little bit? Like right in there?
Yeah.
Lower back coccyx area, technically sacrum. So what you're doing is you're flexing the sacroiliac joint. And it's the joint of these two. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be a flexible joint. It could all be one bone, but why do you think the infinite consciousness created the body like this? Why do you think that happened? Why did they put the joint there? Why do you think it's there?
Which joint is that?
The sacroiliac, sacrum ilium joint. These two. Why do you think it's there?
So that the ilia don't rub together.
Well, no, I'm saying like it could all just be one big bone. Like I'd say, this bone and these two bones could all be one bone, no joint in between.
So we can go.
Could have maybe a little more mobility, but again, there's not a lot of mobility in the joint. Like when you pushed on it, did you feel you really had to? It wasn't like pushing on this, where like, oh, okay, it's moving. It wasn't. It was like, it didn't really move a lot. It moved a little bit. It might have flexed, 3 millimeters or something. It might have moved, right? Okay, so the purpose, the reason it's there, we'll talk about the S-curve as well, is because if it was all one bone, you would break the hip a lot. You'd break the iliums, okay? Because it has this little joint built into it, there's a little flex, there's a little give between the sacrum and the ilium. It doesn't break, it bends, right? Hence the saying, the stiff and rigid will bend little and break a lot, right? So it has flex built into it. That's why when you fell on the stairs, you didn't break your hip, okay? So it provides a little bit of shock absorption to each side, because these are big bones. I mean, look at this. This is a big lever. If you fall on the side, and we all have, you fall on the side of this lever, and it's only attached by a rigid bone here, it would snap all the time. We'd be breaking, all of us would have broken our hips by now. But because the sacroiliac joint is here, again, and it joins, what is the sacroiliac joint? These two bones and this bone. What are the names of these two bones?
Iliacus.
Close.
Ilium.
Ilium. The ilium, and then what are these? What's this?
Sacrum.
Sacrum. So the sacroiliac joint. So see how the joint,
Yeah.
right? So that's how joints are often, like people talk about the rotator cuff, but some people will call this the acromion glenohumeral joint. I mean, I just call it the shoulder joint. A good thing too to remember: don't get all technical with your whole class, even if you know all the stuff. Don't get too technical. If you have a few doctors in the room, you can get a little technical here and there, fine. But don't get too technical, because otherwise, they're not going to know what you're talking about. You say the acromion glenohumeral joint. Do you know? I mean, even though I know what that is, it still like throws me for a loop. Okay, it's the shoulder joint. But still, I could just say the shoulder joint. But we should know as teachers that this is a joint. Okay? And what happens a lot of times with yogis is they get hypermobility of the S, also known as the SI joint. Why is it called the SI joint?
Sacroiliac.
That's right, because it's short for it. That's what they do. So they just call it the SI. So everyone in yoga now, not everyone, but a lot of people just call it the SI joint. And I even made the mistake of the tailbone versus the sacrum. It's just really easy to mix them up. But the tailbone's the very end, the coccyx is the very end. Okay? So now. When it gets hypermobile, sometimes it gets too mobile, and people start to like feel pinching and some nerve disruption in that area. So you don't want it to be super flexible either. Really, that's saying the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long. Anything in excess is not always healthy. You want to be in the middle of your strength to flexibility ratios as a general rule. Okay? Even as a dancer, though you're a dancer, you have to be careful with dancing because like they make you really mobile and the turnout is really hard. Like again, enjoy your body while you're young and you can like punish it and stuff. And believe me, I totally do it. I do it too. So I'm not saying like, enjoy it, but enjoy it within reason. Like, know where to stop and know where to like. I wish that I had made certain decisions when I was younger as to what not to do earlier on before I got injured. There were a few things where I could have like preserved it a little bit more than I did. Even though for a 50-year-old guy, I'm doing okay. But there still are certain things that you want to know, and we'll talk a little bit about that with the hip as well. Any questions on the sacroiliac? It's fine. I mean, there's more to it, but again, we're not doctors. We need to know what not to do. Again, most doctors talk about a 30-degree back bend. That means if this is vertical, this is about 30 degrees. It's a pretty mild back bend. I did want to mention too, the S curve is there. We're not trying to take it out by when we took the break, I talked about pelvic nutation. I'm not sure why in ballet there's always this talk about tuck the tailbone. And I'm not sure why that is. I know in yoga it takes pressure off your lower back, but we're not trying to remove the healthy arch of the spine. It's there for a reason too, similar. Why do you think the spine is shaped like an S? For those of you, for Carly, who's at home, or not at home, she's like at a wedding or something. You can see how it's shaped like an S, right? It's called the natural S curve of the spine. So why do you think it's there?
Because you're naturally supposed to arch like that.
That's a good try, though. That's a good guess. It's there for safety, actually. If everything was stacked perfectly vertical, let's say literally like straight up and down, and you fell on your butt hard from a staircase, let's say you slipped in like 5 stairs down and then you fell, you hit the ground. Instead of it flexing like a big spring mechanism, you would rupture your discs, more of them. You might still rupture one falling down 5 stairs, but you would be more likely to rupture the discs or injure the spine heavily and crush the vertebra. Then, if it, again, the stiff and unbending will break, the soft and flexible will bend, right? So you'll bend, and that's why the spine, that's the purpose and function of the S curve of the spine. That's why we're not trying to take it out. It's there, and it's there for a reason, okay? So when you start to really understand anatomy, you're gonna start preventing injuries. Just by knowing the body and understanding movement, you will prevent injuries. I have many times over doing classes where they're telling me to do stuff that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, that's not good for me. You can do it. I'm not going to tell you how to teach. I'm not doing it. I'm just not. I usually just say, hey man, if I do that, I'm kind of injured, so I'll just say that so I don't have to get into a long discussion about it. And usually I do have some kind of injury there. It might be from 10 years ago, but I'll just say, hey, I've been injured, for instance, in my shoulder. So I won't do that Olympic lifting stuff overhead like that. I just won't do it. It's okay. I'll do other stuff. Okay, so okay, let's go over just briefly again. And again, like I do want you to still work with your anatomy books too. I just know that some of you probably won't read it cover to cover. So I want to go over it a little bit structurally in class, just to give you an idea. And some of you, I think, you'll use the book. Like I still use that book on occasion myself. We can see that deep back bends will also cause a joint collision of the spinous processes. You see right here? Look at. Come up close, you guys, real quick, just so you can get like a really good close-up of this. If my spine flexes into a 90-degree back bend, which would be here, or all the way down into 180-degree back bend, it's impossible to not know there will be subluxation, which means partial dislocation of the spine, right? Because you can see, look, they're going to collide. These things are going to pinch together, or they're going to subluxate. They have to move out of their way somewhere, right? So a lot of students that are doing really deep back bends are like, God, I don't know why, but my spine kind of feels bruised in between. And I'm like, well, when you're doing deep back bends, you're dislocating your spinous processes a little bit. Like, what do you mean dislocating? I'm like, well, they're not supposed to be located and arranged in that way because of the collisions that are taking place. Look at the neck. Look how close these are. Even a 10-degree back bend is going to start to push them towards each other. But a 180 degrees where the woman goes all the way, it's a nice bend, but typically it's usually women, all the way back and she's like got her hands on her ankles, there's dislocation taking place. And that's okay, just know that that's what's happening. It can take it, but it's not necessarily ideal for long term, okay? Not ideal for long term. But again, like, I'm more user-friendly. Like, I like to use my body. I don't want to produce this idea that like, oh, now I can't move in any way or whatever. No, like, enjoy it, but know what you're doing too. So like, understand the anatomy. Talk a little bit about the hip. The hip is so robust, it generally does not get injured in yoga. Now again, does it mean no one has ever been injured in yoga on their hip? There are a few, I guess, but I've been teaching for almost 2.5 decades. I don't know what my last count is, but I've taught over 20,000 yoga classes, for sure, between my privates and my group classes, mainly group classes. I can tell you, people generally don't injure their hip as often in yoga. The wrist, yes. The spine, occasionally. The hip, almost never. It's usually history of injury. They were a ballerina, they've been turning out jumping into a first position for 10 years or whatever before they came to yoga. They've got some issues going on with the hip. That's partially just because they rotate so much. They rotate so much that they start to also pinch and impinge the hip. And when they land, they start getting some joint collision, as we can see here. So, again, as an anatomist, you can see that when the hip is this way, the polished Q is in here. When the hip comes all the way up, you start to see more joint collision possibilities, right? When the hip is externally rotated as well, you start to get onto this part here, where it's not as polished, it's more of a point. This little section right there. See that angle? And then you split. So if you externally rotate like this, and you come all the way up, you split and you start to collide. And that's where you start to get some issues with the hip. Sometimes. Not everybody. Sometimes. Again, this is an average body. Some people have more space than others. It's just a fact. And then, so, again, these are general guidelines. But we do know that there is a high propensity, see if I got that this second. There's a high propensity of hip injury amongst ballerinas. That we know. And again, like, I'm not putting it down, I'm just stating what we know and what we don't know. So when the hip is aligned properly, it's a pretty robust joint. And in yoga, aside from rare cases, which I don't teach those poses, my poses are all based in anatomy. So I don't do the ones where like you rotate your ankles backwards and put your legs over your head like this, you know? I don't do that stuff because I know that in long term, it's gonna cause problems. So I just rather, we've done tons of poses. You guys have only been, I mean, you've been with me for a few years now, but a lot of you have only been with me for a short amount of time. You've probably seen quite a variation of movements that you can do that are relatively safe without doing the really crazy contortionistic postures of yoga that are in the yoga pantheon, I guess you could say, or not pantheon, but the yoga quiver of poses that you could use. On occasion, people will actually hurt their hip, but it's usually their ilium. They're talking about the actual sacroiliac joint. They're saying like, my hip, and I'm like, point to it, and then they show me here. I'm like, okay, that's not really your hip, that's actually your sacroiliac joint you're pointing to. And then, well, what should I do? And I'm like, well, if it's really bugging, you should go see a doctor. You're safer as a yoga teacher to saying, go to a doctor. We're not doctors. You could say like, well, if you've had the injury, I could say, when I broke and dislocated my elbow, I did this. But I'd still recommend that you go get it checked by a doctor so that a professional who can look at the bones and see what's going on. The knee, again, there is something I do want to talk about with the knee. Okay, so we can go ahead and take your seats there. Well, are there any questions about the hip so far? Okay, again, the hip is when you get to the extreme splits, the extreme external rotations, the really extreme poses, which again, it's not even in my sequence that I'm teaching you. If you start doing that stuff, you're going to probably be doing those years down the road or on your own when you're just exploring yoga. And again, you explore it for yourself. Like, just because a pose is a little dangerous, look, surfing's dangerous. I'm still going to do it. I'm just going to do it knowing that, I might get hurt a little bit here and there. Okay. So the knee. All right, so with the knee, we know that, first of all, you can see that the knee, am I too close up?
No, you're
That's
good.
good. You can see that the knee is predominantly like a little kind of track. It looks like a track, right? It's like, there's like a bump or a track here and a little track here. And again, this one they probably took this skeleton from an actual mold from human bones. Because when I researched it, I needed an anatomically correct, medical, because they're not all correct. And I know how the bones look. They look just like this. This one is correct. Now, obviously, the patella might be in a slightly different position, but generally, no. That's about right. So when the knee, you guys have heard me say, line your foot up straight in Warrior 2, right? But you can see, look, I see this all the time. What's happening to the joint here with the track, right? Can you see it? Look at the tracking of the knee.
It's pointed in a different direction.
It's pointed in a different direction, and over time, this is just not the ideal to do every single time you do a lunge, like a crescent lunge or a Warrior 2 or any of those poses. The best alignment for you would be here, right? Very basic. You would think of course, nobody's going to do it the other way. Well, there's a lot of room in here. There's not this is a very robust joint. So we don't see a ton of injuries with the knee, generally speaking, with yoga, except a few. There is one here that we know. When the hip is tight, I can't even do it because it doesn't let me flex that way, which is interesting. A lot of times when you can't even replicate it just on the bones themselves, remember there's tissue inside here. When you can't replicate it on the bones, the joint doesn't even let me flex that way, that's an indicator that maybe the human body is not built to move that way, right? Maybe. Okay. Oh, broken. Okay, so if this one, okay, so let's say, if the hip is flexible, and I'll bet all of you can do this. So take your leg and go like this. Okay, now put your nose to your foot. Can you do that? Almost? Okay. Now, you are way more flexible than the average man. Okay, the fact that you can do this, it means you're pretty flexible. You're off the charts flexibility. If you could put your leg to your forehead without hurting it, without hurting the knee, it means this bone, your femur, can externally rotate easily because the hip is flexible. But if it's not, if you're like most men out there, I'm way more flexible than the average guy, especially in my hips. I should be, I'm a yoga teacher, right? So I can rotate and do lotus position on a block all day long. Well, not only long, but I mean, I can do this with no risk at all to my knee. The problem is that we're teaching average human beings. You're going to have guys. Here's a perfect scenario that I always say. A guy wants to come to yoga. He's been at a desk. Let's say he's a desk clerk or something. Like he spends his whole day, he's an accountant crunching numbers all day long. He heard that a yoga center opened up across the street, and he sees all these pretty girls going to yoga. Again, common scenario for men especially. They're like, I'm really tired of sitting at a desk, and I'm tired of online dating, whatever. I'm gonna go check out this yoga, plus I wanna lose 50 pounds by, right now it's April, I wanna lose it by June, okay? You could see a recipe for disaster just starting with that. But on top of that, he's also tight as hell because he's a clerk in an office. So like he doesn't move like we do on a daily basis. He doesn't wake up and drink tea fast until 12 and like do yoga and stretch and move and then walk the stairs. No, he wakes up, cup of coffee, has bacon, eats a bacon and eggs, hash browns, goes to work, sits at a desk, parks illegally in the handicap zone, and takes 20 steps and sits at his desk till 12. Goes out again, eats and again, day after day. So what happens is the hip binds in place. Like he's tight. He can't, when he's sitting like this, he's like this. Okay? Now, and again, this is little exaggeration. My knees being like this, it's like that. I see this all the time, which means I'm up like this. That's because when I try to externally rotate the femur, I can't. Because it's all like, this is like it's all gripping the bone, okay? He comes into yoga, they're like, all right, everyone, welcome to class. Let's sit in lotus position. And then like the flexible yoga teacher says, now look at my leg. Watch, when I have to bring this over, look, I got to bring it out there. I've got this leverage, right? Now, this is safe for me, so don't get me wrong. Again, these are general guidelines. So like, I can do this, but I have to be careful. But I want to explain why this.
Why is it so hard?
It's hard for you because why? Tell me. I just said why it's hard. Careful your knee. Watch your knee. Okay.
Ow!
Okay, take it out. Take it out. Take it out. Again, now, so inside the joint, when the femur doesn't rotate, but yet he takes this lever. Look how long this bone is. And he takes his lever and he cranks it up. So this is rotated still internally, kind of, although it's mildly externally rotated, but still on this angle. And then he takes his leg here, and with the strength of his giant biceps and shoulders, he cranks it up, kind of like what you just did. And he goes, ow, right? And he says, ow, right? Which she just did. But imagine a guy, like you're still flexible.
I know,
you're
I'm
like
surprised, I'm like,
fit.
ow, I'm like, right, I can.
Right. So the meniscus is in here. And again, remember I talked about joint collision of the shoulder? Same thing. Medial meniscus pinches off. Now, this is a thick, very robust joint. So at first, he just goes, ow, and he takes his leg out. And he puts it back into simple seated position, which is this. There are 3 variants of this pose. But after 2 years, 3 years of inconsistent yoga stretching, but consistently starting, not warm like you are, like we're warm already because we've been doing yoga for a while, he keeps doing it, and he keeps on doing that pose, but he's not flexible enough. Eventually, the medial meniscus tears, and he goes, damn, what? He does it, and he feels like a sound, right? Goes to the doctor, he's got a tear in his medial meniscus. And it took him like 4 years to do that, or 3 years, sometimes sooner. But that's because of joint collision. And again, it also comes from like, oh, no pain, no gain. That's fine when you're doing squats or something, because you're just squatting, you're articulating the knees properly, you're just pain in the muscle. The muscle can take it. The quads, the hamstrings can take that kind of pain. That's muscle pain. But joint pain is a different story. And when you damage this material versus a muscle, A muscle, 2 weeks, it's better. Whatever. Obviously, not a ruptured muscle, but a muscle that was strained and pulled, generally speaking, after about roughly 2 weeks, maybe 3, it's better. Because it's got a lot of blood supply. Joint material is not. What color is muscle when it's, let's say, cut open?
White.
Nope.
Blue.
Red, right? Like if you look at a steak, most muscle is pretty red, right? Chicken is kind of flesh, but not the leg muscle. The leg muscle is brown. It's actually originally red. The brown is because it has a lot of capillary. It has blood that's now brown, but originally it would have been red. If you first cut it open, it would have been more red, right? It became brown because now the blood inside is now dead in the capillaries. Okay, sorry, I know she's vegan, so I'm like, sorry. But I'm just stating what it is, okay? So the medial meniscus gets torn. That's why when a guy's in class and you see him going like this, so he's in lotus, he's in half lotus, and you see him going, and you run over to him and you go, dude, stop. Put your foot down. No, I can do it. I know you can do it. I know you can do it, but you're going to damage your knee. Why don't you just stretch this? I'll tell you what, when you could put your thigh to your chest on both legs, then we'll revisit half bound lotus, or full lotus actually, because there's simple seated, half lotus, full lotus. Okay, 3 different poses. That's the one he's cranking on, because also to clear the first leg, I'm left-footed, so it's confusing to me which one gets injured. I think it's this. Most people start with their right leg because they're right-handed and they're right-footed. Then for this leg to get on top of this leg, what do you have to do? You have to angle it out to clear the knee, right? Because it's got to go in front of the lower knee, okay? And then they've got this perfect L, and the hip doesn't rotate, and they crank it on top, and that's why it damages the knee. Half bound lotus to full lotus, that transition. Okay, so know that. That's one of the main ones with the knee. The other one is locking the knee. I don't lock the knee. Never. Actually, I don't think I ever have. I don't want to say never, because maybe when I was really young and not as educated in anatomy, I might have done it just because other teachers, everyone told you lock the knee, right? Because that's like the Bikram style, lock the knee. But we know in anatomy, and I've said this for probably decades now, you don't lock a hinge joint and force it back on itself. Why would you do that? It's like taking a door, opening it all the way to where the hinge is locked out, and then pushing on the binding. All you're going to do is weaken or break the joint. You're going to loosen up the posterior, okay, what you will loosen up is the posterior cruciate ligament, the PCL. The PCL is there to protect the knee. As with most ligaments, they provide ligaments attached bone to bone and provide structural integrity to a joint. Period. Again, not my opinion. It just is what a ligament is. That's what it does. So you don't stretch them out. You stretch muscle predominantly. Ligament doesn't have stretch volume in it, meaning like muscle, where muscle can stretch 150% of its volume, okay? Because it's like rubber. If you took a muscle out and you went like this, like it would just go like all around, you know. Versus ligaments are more like rock climbing, like nylon fiber. Like they don't, you know, they're strong. They'll flex a little bit. They'll bend side to side, like rubbery kind of. But they're more like plastic. Once you stretch them out, they stay stretched. Okay, they're more like a plastic. They're strong, but don't have volume of flexibility. As a matter of fact, their volume of flexibility is about 4%. That's why people rupture ligaments. They tear them if they stretch them. They tear, usually. Because they're not built to flex like that. They're just actually built to keep structural integrity. Hence, they say a torn ACL. What does a torn ACL require? Surgery. Right. Versus a muscle, You can tear a bit of a muscle and still not require surgery. Torn ACL generally requires surgery. It depends on the percentage of tear. Usually, eventually, it does require surgery. Okay. We did the foot last week. Kind of covered most of structural bone anatomy, and even I talked a lot about the joint material and stuff too. Are there any questions on this so far? No? Okay. Again, it's just about absorbing as much. And again, this is probably the most academic part of the class. It's because I want to set the foundation right. Because once you understand the bones, it's like art. If you've ever done an art class, first thing you have to do is, well, I don't know if it's still true, but you learn the skeleton, right? Because everything on top of that, that's how you know how to shave the knee, because you know that the patella's in there. So you know that it's there. It's not up here, you know what I mean? Like, have you ever seen bad art where you're like, oh my God, this guy obviously doesn't know how to draw the human body, because that's not where these bones lay down. Same thing with posture. Your body functions a certain way, and you got to know those basic functions, and if you don't, that's where injuries will occur. Or I have students that are injured all over the place. They have injuries from history of doing stuff. They come to me usually injured, and then I'll tell them, hey, when you do this, do that. Oh, that doesn't hurt. Yeah. Hey, when you do this, look down. Oh, when I look down, it's no problem. I don't have any pain. I'm like, well, why didn't you look down? They're like, because my teacher kept telling me to look up. I'm like, why does your teacher tell you to look up? I can tell you why he does. Because his teacher said to look up. And the other teacher told him to look up. All the way down to where God was in the sky. So you were looking up. Or something along those lines. I got to put this one back together before we move on. Okay. Believe it or not, it is sometimes that's the answer. Or why? I don't know, it's just like that. My teacher told me. Okay, cool. Let's take out some books and look at that, and see, is that correct? Hey, and if I'm wrong about something, first of all, I'll admit it. But second of all, I want to know. Because I don't want to keep repeating the wrong thing over and over again. That's why I took a bunch of chaturangas out of the set. You guys notice this set only has only a third of not even a third, 20% of the class has chaturangas. The rest is all optional. Because chaturanga is really, really tough for a lot of people. Doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean I'm going to get rid of it completely. But I do think that we have to, at the very least, just limit it a little bit so that the average human being can come to class. Okay, slowly hacking away at this. I think we better move a little bit though. Let's get up and do a little yoga, and then I'll give a little speech after that. But let's do the class. Let's do a little bit of the class, because otherwise we're gonna just be sitting too long. Try to keep it to about 45 minutes per session. So we'll pause this now. All right.